Welcome to another episode of Off the Rak. I'm Walt Rakowich, and I'm grateful to have you here as we explore what it means to practice transformative leadership. Wayne Peacock is the former CEO of USAA, now recently retired. His 35-year career at that company helped to shape one of America's most trusted financial services institutions, serving military families. As president and CEO, Wayne oversaw an organization with nearly 14 million members and over $200 billion in assets, providing insurance, banking, and investment solutions. Under his leadership, USAA ranked 103rd on the Fortune 500 and earned recognition as one of Fortune's world's most admired companies, as well as a military-friendly employer and a Vets Index 5-star employer. He's also a graduate of Tulane University and has completed executive education programs at Harvard, Duke, Stanford, and Wharton. A proud Eagle Scout, he's also dedicated to workforce development and community revitalization in San Antonio. So join us for a conversation with Wayne Peacock, a purpose-driven leader committed to honoring military families, fostering innovation, and making a lasting impact during his career. Hello, Wayne. How are you?
Hey, Walt. Doing great, and great to be with you today.
Great to have you on with me on Off the Rak. I'm really pleased that Herman Bowles introduced us. So I got to start off with this question. I mean, you were recently retired. What's new? What's something you've been enjoying now that you've been retired?
Well, Jenny and I have been out traveling. We've been to Greece. We've been to England, a whole bunch of cities here in the U.S. We have a brand new grandchild as well. I will tell you, there's a big magnet drawing us in that direction as well, and getting a little bit of a chance to work on my golf game also.
Oh my. All right. Well, we're going to have to pick up on that. I've got a couple courses for you. And speaking of grandchildren, they didn't used to wear me out 30 years ago, but I love being with them for a day or two, but that's about all I can handle without some sort of break. I don't know about you.
Well, we did 4 days recently, and we needed a vacation after that, no doubt about
Exactly.
it. I think our 3-year-old has two speeds, very fast and asleep.
Yeah, exactly. That's so funny. Well, listen, it's great to have you on. It really is. And so let's talk a little bit about USAA. The USAA is really built around a mission to serve military families. Everybody in the United States knows that. You guys have done a terrific job in advertisements and the like, but yet you come from a non-military background, which I find kind of interesting. So just kind of curious, what kind of unique challenges or perspectives does that bring to your leadership?
We have first civilian CEO at 100 and at that point 99 years when I took over.
Amazing.
I would tell you that there's certainly some challenges out there, probably a few naysayers when I was selected of what does a civilian know about running this big military-based organization. But in the main, I would tell you that's really been a non-event, and I would say that maybe from my standpoint, maybe even a benefit because I didn't serve. I've worked really hard over my 30 years to understand military life, military culture, the military experience, and bring that to bear both in how I was leading, but how we were directing the company as well. Interestingly, no CEO at USAA had worked at USAA as long as I had. The day that I became the CEO. And so I'd say it's really been a non-factor from my standpoint, although clearly a few stakeholders out there have kind of questioned if a civilian could lead this organization. But Walt, today, we're a $50 billion organization operating in 3 regulated industries, and military leadership matters a lot, but understanding the industries and the businesses and the complexity of bringing that together is vitally important as well.
Yeah. By the way, just as an aside, I'm kind of curious. did you pick Gronk as the guy to do all these advertisements, or somebody else?
I won't take credit for that. What I will tell you, maybe since it's just you and I on this podcast today, we did look at one of the other Patriot slash Buccaneer, personalities as well.
Yeah.
And what I can tell you is Gronk is universally loved across the demographics. And that really was, probably one of the reasons why we selected him, in the final analysis. And he has worldwide appeal. I just got back last year from India. I was in the U.S. Embassy in Delhi, and the first thing they wanted to know when I got there was how was Gronk doing, right?
I'll tell you what, I think he's fabulous. I mean, he's almost he's like a movie star now.
Well, no doubt about it. But what's really, I think, fascinating when you get to know him is the deep care that he has for our veterans and for the military community. And I've seen that, up close and personal for multiple years now. Not only the time he spends with veterans, but the time he spent with our employees as well. The guy truly does care. And as much as he comes off with his image, out there of, being the big goofball, if you will, he's a very serious business person and a very authentic and genuine person as well.
Yeah, he seems like it. He really does. So, Wayne, how many years were you at USAA?
A little bit over 36. I had 10 different jobs while I was there, as well, but almost 4 decades.
So 36 years, you saw the company evolve probably in a lot of different ways, but you still stayed true to the mission of the company. How did you balance the, growth, which you had to have, with, the tradition in the company?
Look, I think we have always come back to our founding story and our founders as the inspiration for this great organization. 1922, 5 Army officers, got together, decided to create a mutual type company and started USAA with 20 of their friends, and 25 cars that we insured at that point in time. And that story has really been the impetus for us to continue to innovate and serve military members over time. We've broadened who we serve. 1922, just the Army. We got crazy in 1923 and let the Navy in. Then we added in, adult children. 1996, we allowed actively serving enlisted folks in. In 2009, anyone who honorably served. And so we've over time broadened the audience that makes up the military community. And we've gone from just delivering auto insurance to a full range of products. But the commonality has been really what sits on top of that wall, which is helping military families build their financial security. Mm-hmm. And how we do that today is radically different than we did, a century ago. But why we do it and who we do it for, remain the same. So this idea that you can live off of the founding story, celebrate those who came before us, and really, build a future for the next generation is very, very consistent. And it isn't really an either or, it's really a continuation, of the great legacy. And from a leadership standpoint, I think about us really as stewards of taking this organization forward, just like the leaders who have come before us have done as well.
That's really very interesting. I interviewed about a year and a half ago, I interviewed Mike Duke, who was a former CEO at Walmart. And I asked him something similar to that. And it was very interesting. He came back to the same thing. He said their culture at Walmart, he came back to the founders. And which obviously was the Sam Walton family, and I just think it's very interesting that if you keep those roots, as you have, you may expand. Walmart has expanded, but at the end of the day, they never lost sight of their founders and what the founders are wanted, and very much the way you've just described USAA.
Well, our mission. It's one of the beauties of USAA. really hasn't changed in 23, 24 years. For our 100th anniversary, we made 2 or 3 very slight tweaks to it, but essentially the mission on the wall and the mission that we celebrate every single day through storytelling is exactly the same today, as it was, generations before.
And I love that, through storytelling. Maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit. But okay, so I'm gonna switch gears a little bit on you. USAA, you guys earned recognition as one of Fortune's most admired companies, which says a lot. And you emphasized that integrity was one of the most important values in your leadership. What did leading with integrity look like to you?
Well, when I became the CEO, really right before that, but when I became the CEO, I formalized this concept of integrity at the helm, which is really the motto of the Gerald Ford, which is the latest, fastest, most lethal aircraft carrier in the Navy's fleet. But it takes its inspiration from Gerald Ford, who I thought was just a great patriot, as well as being a great president back in the day. And he talked so much about leaders really having to lead that way. And for me, it's about honesty. It's about doing the right thing, doing it in the right way. It's about transparency, all of which help to build trust amongst all of your stakeholders. And that foundation of trust is truly what enables companies to do special things year after year after year, and do it in a sustainable fashion and continue to operate with the greatest values and ethics. I will tell you, I can't take credit for the values of USAA. They came before me. I can only take credit for my part in continuing them. But we've really drawn the values of the military community into USAA with a recognition that we have to live up to the same high standards of those who put the uniform on, go down range, and sacrifice to serve our country. And when you set those high standards well, and you hold people accountable for living up to them, you have a much better chance of both delivering great results, but to the point, delivering them in the right way as well, which I think is vitally important in today's environment.
I couldn't agree with you more. By the way, Wayne, I'm going to pull this here. This is my book, Transfluence, and I don't know that I've ever done this on one of these podcasts, but I talk about how transparency leads to trust in this book, and I could not agree with you more. I think it's all about honesty, and I think in doing the right thing, but being transparent about it all. Sometimes the things you talk about aren't things that people really want to hear, but they're the truth.
They're the truth. And I will tell you, in good times it matters, but in challenging times it matters as well. And I think about, I took over as the CEO on the 1st of February of 2020. All kinds of plans about, what we were going to do to, continue to innovate and move USA forward. And then lo and behold, a global pandemic becomes, bigger than life, for all of us. But in those periods of uncertainty, being able to talk to employees, not literally every day, but almost every day about, hey, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but here's what we're doing. And here's what I need from you about taking care of each other, taking care of yourselves, and most importantly, then taking care of our members. If we do that well, we're going to get through whatever this uncertainty is a really good example of, times where you could sit in your office and, hide from the craziness, or you can lean in where it matters and actually be there and be present for your employees.
I couldn't agree with you more. Wayne, I'm just thinking back at what you said a minute ago or so. You were with the company, you said 36 years. And I was with the company for Prologis over 20 years. I'm kind of curious, do you think that was an advantage for you at the end of the day?
I absolutely do. But look, I think there are pros and cons to that. I think, when you've been around as long as you and I have, and we've studied our companies as much as we have, and we've invested so much of our intellectual thought, time, passion, sweat, and tears into it. I think there's a risk that you can build a kind of a confidence bias that, you got it all figured out and it's all good, versus remaining curious, inviting, other points of view, into the decision-making process. And I think that's one of the limitations. But in the main, I think it's a huge advantage. I think about my career as being a disruptor internally, someone who drove a lot of change before I was the CEO, but someone who studied carefully and who worked across many different parts of USAA. So when I became CEO, I had a network, I knew the talent, I knew how to get stuff done, I understood how the organization worked. And I think all of those are advantages if you're willing to continue to be curious and drive, disruption and innovation going forward versus sitting back and saying status quo is good, we're all in good shape. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? You did the same.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, I was just thinking in my case, I came back, I had left the company and I came back. I was asked to come back to run the company during the financial crisis, and we were not in good shape. And I used to tell the board all the time, at least I know where all the skeletons are in this company, They probably, at the time, they needed somebody to understand where all the skeletons were. No, I think net, it wasn't. I love what you just said, though, about curiosity. I do think that sometimes, when you've been at a company for a long time, there's a lot of group speak, and there's a lot of things that unfortunately can draw you down as opposed to, pivoting you forward. So I think if you stay curious and ask a lot of questions, I think it's probably an advantage net.
Yeah, and I think there are two big stakeholders that matter from that. One are your employees, especially those who are out on the front line doing the work, every single day. And whether it's, Admiral Fargo, who was my chairman at the time, or Colin Powell, who I had a chance to spend some time with, the reinforcement about the importance of walking the deck plates or trooping the line, depending on, which branch of service you're from, is vitally important, because that's where you learn what's really happening. Yeah. That's where you get a chance to break down some of the barriers and drive change, at a faster pace. But more importantly, that's where you win hearts and minds of the people who are really doing the work, because they know the boss actually cares about them as people and cares about them in terms of the work that they're doing. And then the other is really listening, to members. I had an open door policy with 14 million members, virtually, but we spent a lot of time out and about in smaller focus groups, talking to members about their experiences, what they needed, how USAA could better serve them going forward. And that keeps you grounded, right? Because we don't get it right every day. And hearing from folks about where we dropped the ball is also vitally important to stay humble.
Yeah. Ask your customers, right? So you threw out Colin Powell's name, and, earlier this year, you hosted former Defense Secretary, retired Marine Corps General James Mattis at USAA's San Antonio campus. What takeaways did you gain from that visit?
Well, look, maybe step back and say I got a chance to interview 12 different senior officers during this series, because every quarter we would bring someone in. I thought General Mattis, stands pretty tall out there in a group of very tall soldiers, sailors, and airmen. And I thought a couple things that day. One was his invoking George Washington and what he had, learned from George Washington, which I wrote about, of, the listening and the learning piece to that, and then asking, how can you help? And that, to me, maybe comes back implicitly to this idea of building trust. Only then can you lead the men in that context, but lead men and women forward. So I thought that was vitally important. His focus on reading and learning, and my term being a student of the game, just kind of reaffirmed for me, that importance of, no matter what you think, like every day trying to add to your knowledge base matters greatly. And I think the combination he brought to the table of being this like deep thinker and this badass battlefield guy, at the same time, is hopefully maybe some things in a much lesser way, I've been able to accomplish because I've been out on the front lines and done the work of the work. But I also try to think very deeply about how we continue to improve. But lastly, he approaches all that with a great sense of humor, as well. And I would say if Ginny and I ever go and renew our vows, we're going to go to that little church in Las Vegas where he got married with a Vegas impersonator as well, which maybe just shows you another side of Jim Mattis, right? So.
Yeah, that's a side that we don't know, I think. It's interesting. Somebody recently told me, Walt, spend 15 minutes every day reading something you don't know about.
Yeah.
Isn't that great? And, I was just thinking, reading and being a student of the game, whatever that the game is that you're playing, but just being a student of life. I mean, reading something every day about something you don't know about. Isn't that interesting?
It's very interesting. So.
Yeah, you'd be a very knowledgeable dude at some point, wouldn't you?
Now, if we could do that well and do that consistently every day, then we can, add to our knowledge base, a bit here, right? So
absolutely, couldn't agree with you.
I think one of the great things about retirement is I have broadened my, my reading just a little bit because my kids would give me a hard time. They're like, "What fiction books have you read, Dad?" And it's like, well, I didn't read any fiction books because I'm very focused on the business side of things. So I've tried to broaden my horizons, just a little bit. So.
I have to admit, though, I've started to read historical fiction, and there's some really great historical fiction books out there that will bring nonfiction into focus by creating a story around it, if you will.
Well, I just finished Thunderstruck, from Eric Larson, which is a great. It's a great story about, murder and intrigue. At the same time, it's a great story about the history of radio waves and Marconi, and, what we take for granted today that was really a technology with maybe in some way about AI with lots of investment and lots of failures before it actually got perfected. So
that's very interesting. All right. So can I switch gears a little bit on you to innovation? Look, I don't think the insurance business is not known for innovation. Financial services business, maybe a little bit more so, but normally people don't think about those being innovative industries. And yet I think USAA, you've been a pretty early adopter of technologies like AI, digital banking, all those sorts of things. How'd you view the role of innovation at USAA?
Well, I'm going to come back to the founding story again. So these 5 Army officers and their 20 friends decided to create an insurance company with no agents, which, today we got a lot of direct to consumer going on. But in 1922, that was not the case. So this idea of innovation really came, as part of the founding story. But I think what has driven us over time is the focus on the customer. For us, that's our member. A recognition that service is the differentiator because all of us are in a regulated environment delivering products that are fairly well kind of controlled around the boundaries. And this obsession with being better tomorrow than we were yesterday, or this pursuit of excellence. And that has driven an innovative spirit that has caused all kinds of, I think, great changes to come to the industry and certainly to our members as well. I go back to mobile banking, let's go back to, 800 lines, in the 1980s and moving away from typewriters and the mail to actually a 800 number call center. USAA was on the vanguard of that with IBM, getting mainframe up, getting paperless, at least a start on that, in the early days, big innovation. But every step along the way, we've tried to figure out how do we better serve members, and whether it's a small innovation out at the edge of member experience, or whether it's happening in the technology system deep below, that spirit is alive and well based on this intense focus on our member and how we serve them even better going forward. When we brought mobile banking out originally, this is before the iPhone, we had three different technologies that we were chasing. We actually had sailors at sea who were in a low bandwidth environment, who were on the other end of our mobile transactions, testing them for us, so that we could build capabilities, for folks who are deployed, and downrange. And then you think about our bank has one branch in San Antonio, and our members would mail in a deposit in an envelope with a stamp, and 6 days later, we would put it in the bank. And that's what birthed the idea of, could you scan that check into your computer, and could we give you, direct credit into the bank, which then turned into Deposit at Mobile, which is now a ubiquitous capability around the globe. That was invented, in San Antonio, Texas at USAA as an example, but it came out of this unmet need, or a need to be able to serve a set of banking customers who weren't close to the branch and who were moving on a every 2 and 3 year basis. So that spirit innovation is really is an enablement for serving members really, really well and being better tomorrow than we were yesterday.
That's what a great story that is. And who would ever think that it came out of USAA at mobile banking? I never knew that. But
well, when I retired, you'll appreciate this. We had a bunch of celebrations, and one of our technology guys came up, and he brought this picture of he and I when he got the patent, or one of the patents, for Deposit at Mobile some 12 years ago. And I had signed the picture for him back whenever that was. And he's like, can we take another picture with the two of us holding the picture from the day that I got my patent? And that too is a good testament that these folks who join USAA, they see this as a mission and purpose. And they could probably go, and make a whole lot more money at a tech company somewhere, but knowing that they're making a difference for people who matter, keeps them, on the USAA team.
Yep. And back to your point before too, I think necessity does breed innovation, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So anyway, what a great story. I'm going to turn again to something different, because I know that you're big on philanthropy and impact. You spearheaded mental health and the launch of Face the Fight and USAA's initiative to combat veteran suicide. I'd like to know what inspired that effort in your mind and maybe the mind of the company. How did you guys do that?
Well, look, we have been supporting the military community both in terms of our commercial products and our philanthropy for a long period of time. And a lot of what we do comes from feedback from members about, what are the big issues that we need help with. And this issue around veteran suicide has been growing and boiling around for a while. And we finally came to the place of, we got to do something about this. And on the surface, it feels like a very kind of huge challenge with maybe not a lot of solutions associated with it. So we spent about 18 months trying to figure out how can we really lean into what we're hearing from members and do it in a way that has impact, at the end of the day. And what we came back to was we can't do it alone. So we're going to spearhead this, but we're really going to build a big coalition of other corporations, foundations, veteran service organizations to work together. And today we have about 200 companies that are participating together in driving change. And our statistical modeling today says we are on course to save about 6,500 lives, which is not just 6,500 lives. It's the family members and the family that is supportive, around that as well. But it really was born, like many things we do, of feedback from members saying, this is a big problem, and USAA should lean in and try to work to solve the problem. Now, I'll tell you that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, is the idea to try to get to them early, or find out about them early when you can, still take care of it?
Yeah, there's a continuum out there. Think about warrior ethos going down range. You have this incredible purpose. You have this incredible tribe that you are a part of. Your brother on the left, your brother or sister on the right. And then we build into you this self-reliance of like taking care of things and not really sharing kind of challenges that I may face. And then you get out and you lose that purpose and you lose that tribe and you may move to a different city. And now you're trying to figure out, how do I find those connections? How do I find work, et cetera? Or I may come back with, injuries seen and unseen that are impacting kind of health in a more broad way. So a part of what we're doing is trying to find ways to build community and connections and networking. In September, as an example, is Buddy Check, month. And I really give the Starbucks folks credit for supporting us, there. But simple things like reaching out and connecting and checking on folks and making it okay to talk about it, which then opens the door to be able to get help, is an example. We've been training healthcare workers that are in rural communities where maybe there isn't quite the same access to the VA, or community providers, because maybe a military person doesn't want to go to the VA for help, to be certified and be able to help in that regard as well. And then there's a lot we're working on right now, the 72 to 48 hours before like an event would happen, where there are flags out there and there are protective measures out there. Think about gun safety as an example. So there's really that continuum from beginning to end. But when you get down into the core drivers, mental health is just one of the challenges. Financial stress, marital stress, or relationship stress are all contributors. That is exacerbated by maybe medical issues, and then alcohol abuse and other things, right? So it's a fairly complex set of issues that we're working on across that continuum with partners to try to be able to offset the challenges there.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, that's a huge challenge, but at least you all and others are working on it. And my hat's off to you on that.
Well, thank you. The rate today is still 2x the civilian population. And
wow.
It's just a really sad statement that we ask folks to sacrifice in that way, and they make it through battle, and then they come home and find that type of a situation back on the safe grounds of being in the USAA. So
yeah. Well, keep at it. Keep at it. I know that your friends and colleagues at USAA will continue to do that. So, Wayne, now that you're retired, as an extension to that philanthropy, have you had a chance to explore other ways you'd like to make an impact? I mean, how are you thinking about that today?
Well, look, I think about the opportunity to pursue the American dream, the opportunity that I got growing up. Hopefully the opportunity that Ginny and I have made together over time, the example that we're setting for our kids. And like, you want everyone to feel like they have a chance to reach the American dream. But when you break it down, education matters, health matters. And I think about health holistically, financial knowledge, and I'm going to use that term today, matters. So I think those are the ingredients that give everyone a leg up and an opportunity to enjoy kind of what should be so magical and amazing about being, an American. So those are the areas that we're interested in. Formally today, I'm working with the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. Elizabeth Dole really came across this challenge when her husband, Bob Dole, was at Walter Reed, recognizing that caregivers really fall in the gaps of what the VA and the DoD benefits provide today. And if you think about a caregiver in a military context, they're going about their daily lives, and all of a sudden they have a injured soldier that they have to take care of, that potentially becomes a life sentence of taking care of them. And lives change, financial situations change, and the benefits are not where they need to be. So we've been advocating for policy change. We've been providing program navigation to be able to access the VA, and then direct program support as well, for the some 14 million military caregivers that are out there today, 35% of whom live at or below the poverty line. So that's, I'm very passionate about helping her with that organization. And then if we think about that more broadly with the aging population in the US, we're going to see this issue of caregiving become a bigger and bigger topic.
Yes.
And if we now go into the workplace today and really start to understand how many folks who are working at our companies are a caregiver of some type, who are balancing not just the normal challenges of work and life, but have picked up one of these duties, whether it's special needs children or aging parents, to go along with that. Are we really creating the right environment inside of our companies to be able to support those who have taken on that type of duty, in addition to the rest of life's burdens out there?
Sounds like you got your plate full.
Working on it. So.
I'm working on it. It doesn't end when you retire, does it?
It does not. So,
and it shouldn't. So that kind of leads me to my last question for you, Wayne, and then I'll let you off the hook. But I ask all of my guests this year about purpose. I just believe that we all should be trying to live a life of purpose. You've spent decades leading with a clear mission. But is there a single purpose that you're most passionate about pursuing today as you enter into the new chapter in your life?
I think about, I don't know, it was probably like 25 or 26 when I wrote down a few things that were important to me. Interestingly, they come back to some of these integrity conversations. One of them was really what I took from my father, of like, tell the truth, start with yourself and look in that mirror and tell yourself the truth every single day. But the second one was this idea of being committed to something that's larger than yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think this idea of being in service is truly a gift, because when you are, and it's not about me, it's about how you help others, not only is there a gift to others, but there's a gift that returns back to you as well. And so I think, this idea of being in service is really what will continue to be a part of who I am. How that gets manifested exactly, I think, back to your comment about reading something new and different every single day, I got a great opportunity to explore a little bit more about that, going forward. I told you earlier I had 10 jobs at USAA. I applied for the first one in 1988. The next 9, someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, here's your next assignment. So it's been like 40 years since I've been out making choices about what to do next. And that's a bit of what I'm doing right now, is going through that discernment phase of, where I want to make a difference. I do think it will be in those areas I described. And then I think so much about the importance of insurance and financial services on enabling and supporting, our economy or family budgets as well. And as much as many people may not think about that as being innovative or exciting, there's a huge opportunity out there to kind of put the grease in the wheels that makes commerce go or makes family budgets go. And I'll probably do some work in that arena as well.
I love that. Financial literacy with people that need it. Wayne, I just want to thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Off the Rak. I mean, it's been really wonderful having you on, and you've given us some words of wisdom that we can ponder a little bit in our lives. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I'll just say it's great. You mentioned Herman, to see, a few real estate guys, making it good in the world out there as well. So.
Yeah, he's great. And Bob, we have Bob McDonald to talk about too, but I'd also like to thank all of you who tuned in. You can Always find more insights from our guests in the Off the Rak Plus newsletter. Follow Off the Rak on your favorite podcast platform. Leave a review if you want. Share this episode with somebody who needs a little purpose-filled inspiration. And until next time, I just encourage all of you to be human with one another and find a way to have a positive influence on somebody around you each and every day. Thank you.
Thanks, Walt. Thanks for your impact.